下面欢迎以色列 Profero 公司 CEO、以色列创业家、安全研究员 Omri Segev Moyal 先生。他的演讲题目是 MITRE ATT&CK 以攻击者的视角守护企业安全。掌声有请。
Enterprises today are under constant attack. As security practitioners, we see it every day. There's breaches, DDoS attacks, infiltration to many networks. We try to fight it. We try to understand what's the roots and origins of all of these attacks. Once attackers have managed to penetrate an enterprise, then they're constantly moving around, doing lateral movements, privileged escalation, exfiltration information. What are they actually doing once they are inside? How they are moving around? These are the things we will try to answer today. My name is Omri Segev Moyal, and I'm CEO of Profero, Minerva Labs, a co-founder at Minerva Labs. In both of these companies, me and my teams are dealing with constant threats, nation-state actors, financially motivated attackers, even business competitors, and a lot of other threats. And what we came to realize is that a single, even two companies, cannot hold all the information regarding threat actors, techniques, attacks, and tactics used by them. So we started to use MITRE ATT&CK, and this talk is about this MITRE ATT&CK framework. MITRE, adversarial tactics, techniques, and common language. In short, ATT&CK. It's a collection of documented tactics, techniques, and procedures, in short, TTPs. MITRE has over 244 techniques across 11 tactics, and it's based on real-world observations, actual cases of attacks, breaches, attempts to attack, data that was exfilled, that was collected in public reports, some internal reports, and managed to create one single framework, holding most of them, if not all. The MITRE ATT&CK framework is available at the attack.mitre.org, so if you have a laptop with you, you can even go inside and check it out. MITRE ATT&CK trying to understand and explain a couple of key topics related to cyber attacks. The first of all is how attackers penetrate network, how they do it, what are the tactics they use, what techniques, when and how, which group did what, how they move laterally in organization, moving from machines to other machines, how they escalate privileges, getting higher admin rights, how they evade defenses, what software they use to bypass our antivirus, and finally, how they actually exfil the information and steal our most valuable data. MITRE ATT&CK uses a matrix system. If you think about it, something similar to an Excel sheet, but it can help really visualize. All the little sentences you see there actually have corresponding articles to the techniques used by actual attacks in the wild. Things like credential dumping, data exfil, and a lot of other things. It's even really easy to click. Once you get into the website, you can click on your specific technique and get to the corresponding article. So it's very intuitive to everybody. Let's break down to what MITRE ATT&CK really is. What is the building components of it? So above all are the tactics, things like data exfiltration, defense evasion, initial access. Below or inside the tactics are the actual techniques. So let's say attackers want to get into a certain network. They first need to get an initial access. That's the tactic. But how did they gain this initial access? That they did it with spear phishing technique. And the spear phishing technique article inside MITRE have a lot of information, examples, and actual methods used by attackers to gain that initial access. Also, right beside it are the threat groups. Basically a collection, if not all, then most, known threat groups in the world that have been attacking enterprises, been financially motivated, attacking gaming companies, attacking critical infrastructure. Each threat group has been assigned all the techniques it's been using. So let's say one certain threat group has been using credential dumping with a Mimikatz software. Then that technique is assigned to it. And you can build a really nice relation between groups, techniques, tactics, and even correlate certain threat groups. Each technique, if possible, also have proper mitigations, or at least suggested mitigations. Things that you, security practitioners, CISOs, threat intelligence teams, even red teams, can use and learn to better protect your organization. It's been crowd monitored, so each mitigation you can trust that it's going to give you some advantage against this kind of attacks. And finally, a collection of software, but don't be wrong, you can't find Adobe Reader over there. You will find software that have been used in cyber attacks, in those campaigns initiated by the threat groups. You can find things like Mimikatz, PSExec, certain Trojan like NJRAT and others, and you can closely follow for new additions of things you need to protect from. Each software also has certain indicators that you can use to protect your organization. So what are the main benefits of attack? First of all, it's a common language. What attack is doing to the threat intelligence industry is what the www protocol did to the internet. Basically, it's establishing a common language that third-party teams, internal teams, different teams inside the same organization can speak and understand. It's basically giving good acronyms to certain attacks, and it gives good examples and explanation of what each technique is. Based on the metric system, it's also very good at visualizing what is the actual security status of your organization. We will go through a case study later on showing how you can build the same graph, the same metrics with the color system to your organization. If we look at the color system, this is how I like to explain the MITRE ATT&CK color system. They have something a bit different, but if we break it down a bit, green is the certain areas that the organization is feeling protected. Be honest with yourself, be truthful, and if you think your organization is secured in one of those techniques, then you can mark it in green. Yellow are the areas where you have certain visibility, you can react to attack, you're not fully protected, but you're sure things are not going to be missed, that you can capture most of the attacks, at least in a aftermatch. This is yellow. In red are the areas we are bad at. We don't have visibility. We don't actually know how to protect against these attacks. Of course, this graph is just an example. Your organization probably going to be different. Even certain departments in your organization might be different. So remember to be truthful with yourself and use the right colors, because these are the things you're going to prioritize next. Thinking about attack in practical terms, attack makes the difference between what most industry use, which is indicators of compromise, IOCs. Things like file names, file hash, domain, IPs. Those are things that we are used to use against attackers, but they are very outdated. They can be easily changed. For example, here, you can see a file with invoice.hta. That file was used in one of the APT attacks. If you want to capture that file, then you have maybe two options. One, to look for the hash of the file. But any good threat actors change the hash on each single attack, even on the same campaign. You only need to change a single byte. So that doesn't worth much. They might use the same IP or domain, but once they get captured, they're going to change that as well. So we are actually going to use the attack way, which is focusing on the tactics, focusing on the technique. And what is the technique here? They're using scripts to run their first malicious payload and gain initial access. And we are going to focus on monitoring scripting activity. So even if they do change the file name, the hash, or anything else, we're still going to log and have some kind of analytics around those techniques. Much stronger. Not perfect, but much stronger. Attack is also amazing at adversary emulation. I explained a few slides ago that in the attack matrix, there's also a collection of each technique used by threat groups. And let's say I'm from Israel, and Iran is constantly bombarding Israel with advanced cyber attacks. In MITRE ATT&CK, there is a good collection of the threat groups from Iran. Most known one is the Iran Ministry of Intelligence, MOIS, or with their most known nicknames, Oil Rig and Muddy Water. So if you follow them and you go into attack, you will see a very good descriptive of all the tactics and techniques used by the Iran cyber forces. If I'm a red team in Israel and I want to mimic and I want to see how my organization will be protected against attacks from Iran, I'm going to collect those techniques and I'm going to create a simulation of the exact tools. There's also open source tools that are trying to automate this, taking all the known techniques, trying them against your organization. Some of the links are right here on the presentation. It's also really good for Red Team to match anything they've been able to bypass in the organization with its correlated attack article and technique. Because in those articles, there are mitigations that the security team, the threat hunting team, and other parts of the organization can learn from right away. So who should use attack? First of all, Chief Information Security Officers. As I explained, it helps them visualize. It helps them understand what is the security gap. And when you actually understand what is your true security gap, you can prioritize the certain areas you are weak in and that are most vulnerable to your organization. So focus on that if you are Chief Information Security Officers. Red teams, of course, because they can use adversary simulation, as I explained, and they can mimic certain attack behaviors. Threat intelligence teams can learn from what threat groups are doing, and they can look for the same indicators and techniques inside their own organization. And last of all, product managers that are focused on security can use attack to prioritize certain gaps their product or projects are weak at. So now that we've familiarized ourselves with the attack framework, let's deep dive into some real case study that we can leverage. If you have a pen and paper next to you, just feel free to follow and write certain things down. The actual examples here are probably going to help your organization as well. You are probably able to take the same example and reflect them into your team and your organization. So let's assume my name is not Omri anymore, but it's Eric. And as Eric, I'm a recently appointed Chief Information Security Officer in a global gaming company. I've got good experience, have good teams, we've got some good security measures, but we are constantly under bombardment. I'm trying to prioritize and see what are the key areas that my team should focus on right now. I have a huge pipeline of security projects, but I really need to visualize and see what I need to do. So I've been to BCS in China, and I learned about the MITRE attack. So I went to the website, and the first thing you do when you go to the MITRE attack website, you go to the search bar on the top right. Why? Because it can find everything you want. And since I'm Eric from the gaming industry, I'm going to simply type gaming. And what I'm going to see is a number of techniques that are used against the gaming industry, but above that are actual adversary groups targeting my industry. And since those groups are targeting my industry, these are the main groups I want to focus to protect against. So I'm going into the first group, pretty known one, maybe some of you have heard about it before. It's called Fin5. And Fin5 are probably origin in Russia, speaking Russian language, and they are financially motivated, targeting pharmaceutical, industrial, and gaming industries. And in their MITRE ATT&CK article, there are all the known techniques they have used to succeed in their attacks. There's also a collection of software they used, things like PSExec, where they used to do lateral movement. So I got some information that is really good for me and I can start work with. I'm going to the next group, which is called WIN NNTI. It's another threat actor focused on gaming industry as well. You can see they use things like process discovery and many more. So these are the areas I want to focus on. Now, Attack has a great tool called the Attack Navigator. It's a web tool you can simply deploy or use the cloud version. You can get into and you can start play with certain techniques, certain groups, and map them to your organization. So the first thing we'll do is we are going to take the groups and we're going to map them in the Attack Navigator. So we're going to click on the top right and we're going to choose the selected groups we've written down before, Fin5 and WIN NNTI. We're going to collect that. We can see that we already have some techniques that are related to us. Now, we're going to give a scoring of 1. You can play with that later, but for the basic side, let's start with a scoring of 1 to each technique used by those threat actors. So we have one layer of Fin5, all of their techniques, and a second layer with WIN NTI and their techniques. But I want to make that into a single layer. So I'm creating another layer with a simple expression that says A, which is the layer of Fin5, plus B, which is the layer of WIN NTI. And I'm going to click Create. Now, we only have score 1 on each of the joint techniques because none of the techniques have correlated. But when you do it on a real scale with around 7 threat actors, you will start seeing high score of certain techniques. Those are usually our techniques that are more likely to hit your organization. Now, what I usually do, I'm going to start map those actual techniques to my security posture. For example, Eric from the gaming industry has really good visibility of any valid account misusage. VPNs access, web access, they control everything. They have good monitoring, they have good logging, behavioral, machine learning. They're pretty covered with that, being honest. So they're going to mark that with green. Then they see there's the external remote services, even related to third parties. They got some monitoring, they got logging, they can definitely see every activity, but they don't have good signatures, and they know people can actually get in from that spot. So they're going to use yellow for that. After that, they're going to mark some others, and second, they're going to see that there is a technique called code signing. Eric and his team are not sure what code signing is. So they're going to right-click on the code signing and go to View Technique. And this is a good example of what attack is good at. Right away, you're going to see an article, very detailed, on code signing, what it is, the mitigations, and what attack groups have been used. Sadly here, there's no mitigation for code signing. It's really hard. It's abusing a system feature. So we're going to leave that in red. There's some others, and finally, we are left with credential dumping. And since code signing is really hard to follow, Eric decided that he and his team are going to follow credential dumping. They're going to improve their security status against that. So he's reading about credential dumping, and he's copying the article. And now he's basically sending an email to his team. Remember, communication. Same language for everybody in the organization. Basically, it goes like that. Hey, security team, I have used the attack framework to visualize our security gaps, and I found that credential dumping is the techniques we need to focus on first. Please find some immediate mitigations for it. Here's the related attack article. So everybody can speak the same language, everybody can be on the same page. Going fast into the future now. Now we are Jan. Jan is the leader of the endpoint security team, and Jan sees the email and he wants to solve this problem. Jan also went to BCS and he knows about the MITRE attack. He learned it with his team. So Jan goes to the credential dumping page and he sees that the most used software for credential dumping is Mimikatz. He reads about it and he sees that Mimikatz is a tool that was initially used for red teaming and security testing, but now it's been used by most threat actors. I'm sure some of you have used Mimikatz here as well, as security and an attack. And basically, he says we must focus on it, we must prevent against it. He goes to the mitigation section in Mimikatz, and he actually sees something that he doesn't like. Each of those mitigations takes time. It's a long process. It's not going to be immediate, as Eric, his boss, asked him, but he wants solution. He doesn't want to keep the MITRE attack section there as red. It feels vulnerable. But he went to the conference and he learned about that MITRE also has cyber analytic repository. And what's the cyber analytic repository? It's a collection of log analytics, explanations of each log, what sensors needs to create those logs, and type of signatures and behavioral signatures that you can use to detect certain attack techniques in your organization. You can easily deploy them in things like Splunk or ArcSight or other SIEM solutions. So he goes to the lab with his team. He's taking the Mimikatz tool from GitHub. He's taking the analytics, and they use Splunk, for example, and they're testing it. They're improving them to be a bit more related to their organization. And after even a short day, they already have good signatures, good analytics, tests for those analytics. And he says, let's deploy it in the lab. Let's deploy it in a few simple environments. And he can finally move to production. So he's really happy with what just happened. And he's sending an email back to Eric. Remember, communication. Hey, Eric, I'm sorry to tell you that we've looked at the mitigations for credential dumping and specifically Mimikatz, and this is going to be a very long process. But because you wanted some immediate actions and we want to be better prepared, we have used the cyber analytics repository to create some signatures, to create analytics, and we have now good visibility against its attacks, and we are monitoring it in our SOC. Please move from red to yellow, and we will follow later on the actual mitigations. Thank you. So basically what we were able to see is that we had an introduction to MITRE, MITRE attack, We learn what it is, when it started, what kind of things it holds inside, what are the building blocks, the techniques, software, mitigations, and the attack groups. We explore the attack matrix and how we can use it to visualize and improve our own security. We looked at the benefits, things like adversary emulation, common language, and who should actually use MITRE ATT&CK. We deep dive into a simple case study that can show how each organization, from small to big, government, financial, industrial, can start work across wide organization and even with third parties to use the MITRE ATT&CK framework to improve their security status. Thank you.
感谢 Omri Segev Moyal 先生的精彩演讲。